I'm Abdul Saad, transformational coach at Vital Mind Coaching. Follow me on Facebook, just search for Vital Mind Coaching. I've also practiced as a clinical psychologist for the past 15 years. And today I want to look at the very public fallout that Prince Harry has had with his family. And I want to look at this situation through a transpersonal or archetypal story and lens, moving beyond narrow psychological and psychiatric categories or diagnostic labels to attempt to gain a deeper understanding, a more human understanding of the situation, which has obviously captured the world's attention, especially the Western world. Now, the parable of the prodigal son is a parable in the New Testament in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, verses 11 to 32. And it's a parable told by Christ in response to the accusation leveled against him that he welcomes sinners and that he dines with them. Now, the parable is about a father who has two sons, an older son who is dutiful to the father and serves him faithfully, and a younger son who one day of his own free will demands to leave the father's kingdom, and asks for his share of the inheritance to make his way in the world on his own. Now, leaving the father and his home, he goes out into the world and spends his inheritance. He lives rebelliously and recklessly, engaging in all sorts of mischief-making and bad living. He ends up finding himself miserable, lost, destitute and without resources, humiliated and forsaken by the world. Having experienced this abject humiliation from his failed attempt at individuating from his father, that is, to becoming a man in his own right, he experiences deep pangs of regret and despair, longing to be reunited with the father and his former life and home. He makes his way home feeling deep shame and remorse, expecting his father to reject him. So he plans to ask his father to make him a servant as a penance for his sins. Instead, seeing his son returning from afar, the father is delighted and rejoices, rushes to his son, embraces and kisses him. The father restores the son to his place in the household and orders a feast to celebrate the return of his lost son. The father declares, "This son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is now found." Now the older son, who had dutifully served the father, is upset at the welcome reception the younger, reckless, rebellious, and disloyal brother is receiving, declaring that he had served the father faithfully, but had never received such treatment, such as throwing a huge banquet for him. The wise father counsels his older son, explaining to him that he is always with him and everything he has is his. But the younger son, his brother, was lost and is now found. Now, this is a profoundly deep and beautiful parable which can be analyzed from multiple perspectives. When applied to the current situation with Prince Harry and the estrangement he's experiencing with his family, in particular his father, King Charles III, the parable provides a powerful paradigm for more deeply understanding the dynamics at play and what is needed for the successful resolution of such an estrangement between father and son. Where I want to focus my analysis is on the father-son relationship through the lens of the archetype of the wise king, represented by the father in the parable. And of course, King Charles will be coronated in May, which makes this parable even more relevant. Prince Harry's dad is actually the king or a king. Now, we see in the parable that the return of the son revives the father. He breaks into a loving embrace, embracing his lost son, like an amputee would embrace and rejoice at having a lost limb returned and restored to their body. The father in the parable representing the king archetype in his fullness, neither the weak king who neglects the son, nor the tyrant king who seeks to punish and condemn the son, but the wise king seeks no retribution or penance from the younger son. He lovingly accepts him back without need to blame him or exact vengeance. The wise king, like the wise father in a family, blesses those in his care. He sees their innocence and can see that they are in fact not fundamentally bad or evil, but simply misguided, innocently acting out their misguidance. The son was in error, sincerely believing, really being deceived by his distorted perception, until reality weighed down on him so heavily, so brutally, that veils lifted and the son was forced to confront the reality of his failed mission of individuation. Now, in reality, he was a boy pretending to be a man, and the father in the parable is in fact a fully initiated man. He is the king, or a king in his own right, so he can understand the error of his son and extend to him a magnanimous welcome at his return. In this respect, the king is truly strong, for his strength allows him to extend mercy and love without the need for any reprimand. The king/father here displays an intelligence that transcends the linear, rational intelligence of the mind, which would justify condemning the son, punishing him to teach him a lesson. But instead, the king here is expressing the higher intelligence of the heart. In the chakra system, he has an open heart chakra, the intelligence of the heart, which is non-linear. It does not correspond to pure reason devoid of the wisdom of the heart. And it's not that the intelligence of the heart is irrational or anti-reason, but that it is supra-rational, or it transcends reason. Where the mind disconnected from the heart sees division and judgment, the heart is capable of discernment, discerning essence from outward appearance, seeing innocence where innocence truly exists. The heart can comprehend why people do what they do, often acting out deep hurts, wounds, and defenses. The wise king/father sees that the son was misled by his own emotions and false perceptions. He was governed by eros, by the lower passions and emotions. He was drunk on his own ego inflation, convinced that he could make it on his own. In reality, he, the son, was still an apprentice that prematurely concluded he was a master. He was a boy and not a fully initiated man. In rejoicing at the return of the son, it is clear that the father/king did not experience the loss of the son as a narcissistic injury to be remediated by being cruel and punitive to the son upon his return. Instead, the king/father experiences the loss of the son as a deep pain in his heart, as a heartbreak. A piece of him died with the loss of his son, and it has come back to life again upon his return. With respect to Prince Harry and his father, King Charles, rapprochement, healing, and reconciliation is possible. Hope springs eternal is what comes to mind. The parable of the prodigal son points us to what is required from both father and son for this reconciliation and healing to occur. In the case of the son, in this instance, Prince Harry, it requires taking radical responsibility for his situation, to truly reclaim his sense of agency and recognize that where he has landed is not entirely, not purely the fault of everyone else, whether the institution of the monarchy, the British press, or individual members of his family. In order to exit from his self-imposed exile, he must take radical accountability for the part he has played in the breakdown of the relationship. Having achieved this awakening, reclaiming his sense of agency rather than projecting it out onto the world, he can then return to his homeland, not as a victim needing rescue, nor as an angry adolescent stuck in a power struggle with a long list of demands from his father, or to his father, but as a fully initiated man in his own right. A man that has integrated the boy within, imposed limits on himself, as all fully initiated men must do, which means no more books, no more interviews, no more accusations to begin the process of healing. The son must recognize that his earthly father is not perfect and that no father can fully embody the archetype of father slash king in its fullness. In the case of the father, in this case King Charles III, the parable points to the essential role of the father remaining magnanimous, open-hearted, and willing to receive his son. The wise king, the good king, does not fall into the trap of dualities, a trap being stoked in the current media furore, with one side imploring King Charles to cut ties with his son, not extend an invitation to him or his wife Meghan to the coronation, and another side suggesting King Charles should all but capitulate to Prince Harry, submit to his demands, and reform his kingdom according to his younger son's prescriptions of what is wrong with it. Neither of these positions represent the higher wisdom of the king archetype. The parable of the prodigal son points to the essential need for the son to reclaim his own agency, not by leveling accusations and blaming others, for this is the hallmark of an adolescent psychology that Prince Harry appears to be arrested in. None of the above analysis means that Prince Harry's grievances, hurts, and wounds are not real or not justified or are inconsequential. Rather, this analysis points us to the insight that these grievances, hurts, and wounds are being carried and nursed by an adolescent psychology whose chief tools are accusation, blame, and demanding that others change, leaving Prince Harry in a position where he has run out of room, he has run out of runway. There is only so far that accusation, blame, and making demands can take you. The prudent thing to do now is to lay down your sword and turn inward, reclaim your inner authority, reform your inner kingdom, and return to your homeland, a fully initiated man, ready to reconcile with the king. Ready to reconcile not because you are weak or submissive or have backpedaled, but the very opposite, because a fully initiated man is a man who has reconciled with the Father, his earthly father and his human limitations, and ultimately he's able to submit to the father/king archetype, which is ultimately represented by God, or an authority that transcends human subjectivity. Those of us still stuck in elements of our boy psychology are still wielding a sword or spear toward the Father, unable to get past the fact that our earthly father was deeply imperfect, because he could never represent the archetype of father and king in its fullness. Only very few men in history ever could, and these were the men who achieved perfection on the human plane. History remembers them, and billions of people around the world venerate them and say their names daily. The rest of us fall deeply short. I hope that this message inspires people to think more deeply, more calmly, and more lovingly, and that we can learn deep lessons from what to me is an archetypal, transpersonal story playing out in the modern age in a very public way. With love and light, God bless. Take care. See you next time.